In today's video, we're going to go through a full day of eating for a pro natural bodybuilder in their off season. That's me trying to gain as much muscle as possible whilst minimizing unnecessary fat gain. Let's go through it. So believe it or not, meal number one is not really a meal. So I wake up around 7:30 and I don't have my first meal until around 11 a.m. So within that fasting window, I tend to have a sugar-free Monster and a half caffeinated coffee. So that gets me a decent hit of caffeine, but nothing too crazy. It's also earlier enough on during the day not to impact my sleep too negatively. It will still be in my system somewhat, but with the half-life of caffeine and having it done that early in the day, I typically don't have any caffeine past around 9:30 a.m. I'm in a better position and it allows me to really get a lot of work done. This is kind of my prime time for work and client work. I concentrate very heavily on that and I get a lot done. Also, it reduces the window that I'm eating. And at the moment, because I'm trying to, as I said at the start, gain nice and steadily, nice and slow, and my appetite is good, it allows me to control my appetite a bit better. A lot of people in their off seasons find actually their appetite is really good and they just kind of eat into it and they're like, oh, I shouldn't be hungry, I'm in my off season. It's like, hunger is driven by so many different things. And if you're healthy and your training is going well, hunger is great. You just have to maintain that calorie surplus that isn't excessively large. So it just shortens my eating window. And this is early on during my gaining phase, of course. I'm still pretty close from stage, and so I'm reasonably lean at this point. So yeah, I just like to kind of extend my fasting window by having a shorter eating window. It just helps adherence and also productivity in the morning. So my first meal that you're seeing me prepare here is, like I said, I have that at 11 a.m. I actually cook it at 8 in the morning, and then I leave it to kind of cool down and solidify and get a nice kind of topping to it, if you will. I call this croats. So it's cream of rice. Well, it's mostly oats. So I actually do, let's give you precise figures. I do 100 grams of oats. I cook that with some salt and water, and I do that for 4-5 minutes until it's somewhat cooked. Then I add 40 grams of rice flour, mix that in, and then I cook that for a minute and a half until it's pretty damn thick. Then I add in, I typically do mix my proteins here. So I'll do a bit of casein powder, about 25 grams. I do 25 grams of whey, and I mix that in. The reason I like that combination is because the casein really thickens things up. I don't want it overly thick, but it just does a really good job at making the texture very, very nice there. And once I've mixed all that in, I'll add in 100 grams of blueberries, and I'll then top it with some dark chocolate. And I'll set that to the side to kind of sit and form a skin on top, and I just like that. And that'll be meal number one. So I eat that, like I said, at about 11 a.m. I'll also have a naked bar typically, which is, for those that don't know that brand, it's basically dates and nuts, and that's it, and nothing else. So it's just a nice tasty way to get in a serving of fruit and also some kind of quote unquote healthy fats, unsaturated fats from the nuts there. And I eat this, like I said, at 11 a.m. and then I'm training typically around 1, maybe a bit later, but between 1 and 3 is normally when I'm training. When I train, I do prepare an intra workout shake, and this is just to keep blood sugar levels high, and that allows me to stay a bit more focused and motivated during the session. I've found if I ever have dips, that doesn't help in blood sugar, that doesn't help with concentration, motivation to train. I'll also have my creatine within this shake, so typically I just have a flavored creatine here, which allows that dextrose to go down a bit better. And I'll put a bit of salt, because when you're sweating in the gym, the most you're losing in terms of electrolytes is salt. So that's the heavy lifter in terms of electrolytes, and I don't think it's worth really investing in electrolyte powder typically. I think that's just fine. Also, a lot of people who are training in air-conditioned gyms aren't sweating that much. Probably not a huge deal, other than just being hydrated, through water there. So I have that there, and that sets me up well for kind of quite big volume sessions. And it's also been a while since I've had that pre-workout meal, especially if I push training a bit later. And it also gives me some time post-workout not to worry about hey, I have to really get in a post-workout meal because I haven't eaten for so long. It just kind of extends that window of opportunity, if you will. And I think there are enough pros to it, and I'm only doing 15 grams of dextrose, for God's sake. It's not very much. So then post-workout is literally the same as my pre-workout. So I do my croats, and It's exactly the same apart from I don't put blueberries in it. What I do is typically have 2 portions of some sort of fruit at this time. Typically I have a couple of kiwis and an apple, but I'll mix it up depending on what's available and what I have. And that's my post-workout. And normally I'll top this up actually with like a protein yogurt or something like that. Just to, I keep my protein very high. It's a bit higher than generally recommended, but I like having a high protein intake, and there's no downsides, and there could be potential upside looking at the kind of recent evidence that's been coming out. At least there was that meta-analysis by Martin Refalo and colleagues where it was up to 1.5 grams per pound during a calorie deficit allowed people to grow muscle better. So that kind of same thought could be applied to an off season. I don't think you want to have 1.5 grams per pound. That's quite high, but I'm in that mix of 1.2 grams per pound. Some people might say that's a bit high, but as I've said at the start here, I'm a pro bodybuilder looking to gain as much muscle as possible. So if I can potentially put something in my favor by having a higher protein intake, I will do that. Also, it's to my preference. A lot of these, actually everything I'm eating here is just food I love. So I make sure to hit my preferences there. So then that's the post-workout. Then at 8 p.m., so a number of hours later, I'll do my dinner. So I really just have 3 main meals in the day, all around 1,000 calories. My calorie intake at the moment is sitting around 3,200, 3,300 calories to gain a nice, slow, steady pace. I'm really aiming for about a 1% rate of gain per month at this point. Because of the level of advancement I am, that's closer to the realistic kind of rate where I can maximize muscle gain, hopefully, whilst minimizing the fat accumulation as well. I'm not too focused on trying to minimize fat gain. I'm more focused on trying to maximize muscle gain. But if I gain more slowly, it also means I can gain for longer. And I'd really like to gain throughout 2025, not have to go into any sort of deficit, because 2024, obviously, I competed and that was the majority year spent in a calorie deficit. So I'd love a nice year in a surplus. That would be awesome. So yeah, my dinner always looks like a big salad, for which I have like spinach, beetroot, kimchi, tomato, peppers. I normally put on like some broccoli, so I try and get a real good mix of vegetables of different types. So lots of color here, and lots of variation, because I do think variety, not just the spice of life, but it's also really good for promoting good health. So having a great variety there. In terms of like fruit and veg, people talk about like a 5 a day. If you're having 5 apples, that is not 5 fruit and veg a day. That counts as 1. So I like to have a nice amount of variety there, because every fruit and veg, obviously different colors and everything, it's going to have different phytonutrients, micronutrients, obviously the fiber and everything in there too. So I like to have that. I then typically have some sourdough. Really like sourdough, just from a taste, texture, flavor perspective, but also it has some potential gut health benefits with like the fermentation process and things. It's higher in fiber too, versus like just a white bread. And I love having that with avocado. It's just like chef's kiss. Really enjoy that one. And then at the moment, I either do like some salmon on the side, or I'll do an omelet. And I have some like mushrooms in that omelet too. And that's fantastic. And I'll finish off my day with a Ninja Creamy. And my go-to recipe there is 250 mils of skim milk. I do a scoop of whey, or scoop of protein, basically. I have often mixed like casein and whey to kind of mess around with textures and things, but a scoop of protein typically works well. And then a banana and some cocoa powder also goes really well if you're making a chocolate one. And that's kind of me done. On days where I have like some calories left over and things, in the evening I typically indulge in what has been recently, it's been Easter, and Charlotte got me the Waitrose croissant donut. Look it up if you don't know what it is. It's pretty cool, and it's so random, but it's tasty. And I've just been doing like 30 grams of that or whatever, so it's like 100 to 200 calories worth of just something delicious that I just fancy. And that really sums up my overall approach to nutrition. If you haven't kind of garnered that, it's very, very simple. Hit my macro and micronutrient targets, and base most of my diet around plant and whole foods, and still leaving room for things that I love and enjoy, meeting my preferences, and allowing it to be long-term and sustainable. And this is like my diet on a day-to-day basis. I'm very robotic about this. Weekends look a little bit more varied, especially on Sundays when I don't train, because I don't have to prioritize carbohydrates around the workout window as much. And then typically on Fridays, as many of you might know, me and Charlotte tend to do a takeaway. So I tend to just remove that dinner, with the salad and everything like that, I might still have a bit of a salad and some veg, and then we'll do a takeaway and we rotate her choice, my choice, and we just kind of go through it like that. And that's really the only difference. Otherwise, yeah, it's very static, very effective though. So some big take homes, if you haven't already taken these home from this video, it's things I hope you take home from it. So spreading my protein between 3 feedings, like quite nicely spread through the day. And I have kind of my biggest protein feeding is more of my pre-bed one, when there's a big window before my next protein feeding to kind of raise MPS, muscle protein synthesis, as high as, not high as possible, nice and high, so it kind of stays elevated through the night. Maybe some theoretical benefits to that, but it does seem the data suggests 3 servings is the minimum you want to go to maximize muscle gain for protein, total protein by the end of the day being most important. Then carbohydrates biased around the workout window, but I have plenty, so they are spread through the day. I eat when I have a good appetite and when it just works for me and my preferences and for adherence. I have lots of plants, so you'll see in this day I have 5 fruit and 5 veg, so I get nice 10 there, and that's great for immune function, health, longevity. It allows great digestion, all that good stuff. Do not shun fruit and veg during your gaining phases. Keep them in for as long as you can. Again, lots of you, to give some context to this full day of eating, I tend to hit an appetite ceiling during my gaining phases versus getting too over fat. And so I am embracing having a good appetite. And if that means I have to make my diet very wholesome, very high in fiber, lots of fruit and veg, that's only a good thing to me. As I get deeper into my off season, my appetite starts tanking. I might have to change some things up. For example, oats might eventually just completely go and I go to cream of rice. I typically end up leaning on a lot of cereal products and things like this. I might end up having some fruit juice, some dried fruit. Might use some pureed vegetables, some soups to try and get that in. And yeah, it's an unfortunate part of the process. Unfortunately, the extremes of bodybuilding get uncomfortable. Then, so obviously I mentioned prioritizing whole foods and eating foods I enjoy. And that's really the big take homes I wanted you guys to have. Maybe it's giving you some thoughts, food for thought, quite literally, of how to set up your day of eating. And just make sure to look at the principles, the big take homes versus following my meal plan specifically. That's not going to drive results. You meeting your specific protein needs, your specific meal pattern that's going to allow for adherence, eating fruit and veg you enjoy is all going to be super important. I could make comments surrounding, hey, I'm having spinach for the nitrates, the beetroot for the nitrates. So I have a high nitrate intake, which is going to help blood flow and help gym performance and help potentially progress there. My pre-workout contains blueberries and oats and rice. And so I've got multiple kind of carbohydrate sources, which is going to allow me to have maximum glycogen uptake and better performance in the gym. There's lots of details that I could run into and talk you through. But ultimately, I think they're such small fry. It's just worth you finding a dietary pattern that allows you to meet your overall targets through foods you enjoy, meeting your macros, spreading it nicely through the day, and you're golden. That's going to meet 99% of the progress. You're going to have to worry about things you digest well, that sort of thing. But guys, anyway, I'll stop rambling. I'll leave this here. If you did enjoy this video, let me know. If you have any comments or questions surrounding this, do comment them below. Give me a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. And I guess I'll catch you in the next one. The only other point I will say is this is stuff that I do with my clients. So if you don't know, I'm an online coach. I will walk through my clients' day of eating. I like to put myself in their shoes. I never give them a meal plan, but they will develop one based off how they typically eat. And that structure is so helpful for making great gains in an off season. I very much think about it hey, if you have a uniform for work, you don't have to think about what you wear. You just put it on and you go to work. Similar to if you have a nice structured way of eating in your off season or diet phase, you don't have to overthink it. You don't have to stress out about it. You just follow those principles and it leads to success. So yeah, if you are at all interested in online coaching, we do it all, walk through all the nutritional perspectives, the training, lifestyle, stress, sleep. We cover your bases. So yeah, if you are interested in that, whether or not you're stepping on a bodybuilding stage doing a photo shoot or just want to feel and look better, we're here to help. So that'll be linked in the description too. But otherwise, guys, catch you in the next one. Take care.